Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. The city has unveiled a plan with a new vision for downtown Windsor, but it's going to come at a cost. Plus, a local football player is hoping to be selected in the NFL draft in Detroit this week. We chat with Theo Johnson about what may be the biggest moment of his life and how one Kingsville woman turned her hobby into a booming business. A story of sheer survival, art, and thrifting. Windsor Council is pitching a new plan to revitalize the city's downtown core. It pushes for higher standards, more police officers, and a better access to mental health services. But it comes with an extremely rare move, increasing previously approved tax bills. The CBC's Chris Ensing reports.
This is the image of downtown Windsor people want to change. Strengthen the core. That's the name of the 7-point plan pitched today by the mayor. Topping the list, safer streets.
I do feel that people genuinely, when they talk to us and they talk to the people that work with me, they don't feel safe at times. And if they don't feel safe at times, then perhaps there's something we can do.
To fight that, the plan calls for 12 additional police officers, part of a city center patrol team assisted by a crime analyst. There's also the expansion of Project Safe Streets, which mimics the green light cameras in Detroit. Police say a pilot project launched last August put live cameras at 4 businesses in the core and resulted in a significant reduction in crime. Another nod to Detroit, there's plans to purchase and launch these light and camera units to deploy in problem areas downtown.
Well, the cameras will make all the difference in the world in terms of being able to prosecute people for crimes or to be able to get evidence for events that happen.
Next, higher standards. The city will dedicate a bylaw officer to downtown, enforcing property standards in the core. Plus, there's a promise of new bylaws to get vacant buildings properly maintained, increasing fines against neglectful owners, and exploring name and shame lists for buildings with property orders against them. The plan calls for council to incentivize converting buildings into residential units and attract a grocery store downtown. The councillor of the core says this isn't about bringing back the booming downtown from the days before new border measures.
It's going to be better. Right? You can't recreate the past. That's not what anybody's trying to do. Right? Downtown Windsor, the future of our downtown is a neighborhood.
Mayor Drew Dilkins says the key part of this plan is healthy spaces, the city extending hours at the homelessness and housing hub and pushing for a low barrier transitional care facility.
The missing teeth in the smile here for downtown is that we need a place that can be open 24/7 for police and ambulance folks to be able to bring people who are experiencing mental health sort of crisis issues for drop-off, for treatment that doesn't clog up the emergency rooms but gets them the treatment that they need, which is specialized and specific.
It's a solution health leaders in Windsor continue to discuss. We've been talking about that for years. Where does it stand?
Well, it's a matter of getting the services together and getting the partners together to come up with those services. It's not in a hospital. It's out in the community. So it's working with the community partners to have a place for individuals to go who don't need to be hospitalized.
What the plan wants comes with an extraordinary step. Council will be asked to reopen the previously approved budget and raise taxes by 0.7%. That will cover off $3.2 million in costs, and that mainly pays for additional police officers and extending hours at the homelessness and housing hub.
Clearly there's a fee to providing additional security and implementing a lot of these initiatives, but we actually believe the investment will generate a return that will end up paying for itself.
Council will look at the plan at their next meeting. If approved, it goes into effect immediately. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
A dramatic crash early this morning near Windsor's downtown. The driver now facing a charge of careless driving.
Someone flipped their car over on their side. It's blocked off all the way down.
A car ended up on its side after smashing into several parked vehicles on Bruce Avenue near Giles Boulevard. It happened around 5 this morning. Police say the 55-year-old driver suffered minor injuries and was taken to hospital. A witness says the woman had to be extradited from the car. Cassandra Messina's vehicle was one of those hit. She says dangerous driving is happening all too often.
There's constant accidents, and we're seeing it more common now. There needs to be maybe more precautions, and maybe, stop signs aren't enough. right? And maybe, speed bumps in the road, especially in this area. We're surrounded by tons of grade schools, tons of different kid activities where there's constantly people walking. And, thankfully it was early in the morning, no one was out, no one was in their vehicles. Minimal traffic on the road, but I can only imagine what would have happened if this was midday.
A Toronto area man has been found guilty after being accused of trying to smuggle nearly 200 kilograms of meth into Canada at the Ambassador Bridge. This happening in 2019. At the time, the CBSA says that was the largest meth seizure they had on record in the last several years. It was valued at more than $25 million. The defense acknowledged the drugs were in the man's vehicle, but the issue in this case was whether he knew about the drugs. On Christmas Eve of 2019, the CBSA says the Mississauga man was returning from a 14-day trip to California. After being selected for secondary screening, CBSA officers say they noticed an overwhelming odor that smelled similar to nail polish. The CBSA says that turned out to be nearly 200 kilograms of meth, all found in the cab, not the trailer. The court decision was released Friday. In it, details show this was the man's third trip as a truck driver for the Brampton-based employer. At one point, the documents say he took a 22-hour break crossing into Mexico. He then took an Uber using the name Zach Morris and communicated by phone with someone named El Chapo. The judge said the Crown's case was circumstantial, but that the evidence was overwhelming, with the judge ruling a roll of tape found behind the driver's seat matched the tape that sealed the boxes of drugs. The judge said that suggested those boxes were sealed by the man being accused of transporting the meth. The man is now awaiting sentencing while out on bail.
My client is a father of 2 young children. He is the primary breadwinner of the family, I should say. That's very important. He has no criminal record. This is the first time before the courts.
Similar to the program at the beer store, a local pot shop worker is pushing for cannabis stores to adopt a sustainable packaging and container return program. The University of Windsor student says Ontarians are not given any incentives to recycle packaging. Shane Peters spoke with Windsor Morning host Amy Dodge.
Even just in my location, like out in the parking lot, little joint tubes scattered all around. I used to walk to work, and it's a 30-minute walk, and along this whole walk, there's cannabis packages all over the place, all over the ground, just out in the grass, and it's very discouraging to see as someone who works in the industry, and it being such a new industry, there was really no reason for there not to be some sort of green initiative like this put in place from legalization.
It's the moment of a lifetime for a Windsor athlete. 23-year-old Theo Johnson is hoping to be selected in the NFL draft in Detroit this week. Johnson moved to Windsor when he was 10 years old, playing football at Holy Names Catholic High School, later committing to Penn State. I sat down with him to talk about how he's feeling just days away from the draft and what it means to get this opportunity so close to home. When did you start playing football?
I was begging my mom, hey, can you let us play? Can you let us play? And finally, they gave us a flyer at school for the Cambridge Wolverines. And I'm like, all right, maybe this is my chance. Gave it to my mom. She finally caved and let us join. So I have 5 brothers, 2 older brothers and 3 younger brothers. I think it definitely contributed to my competitive nature, my work ethic. When you have your older brother kind of pushing you, someone to kind of chase after. Being a younger kid, it forces you to work harder than maybe someone at your age.
Are you able to take them now?
Oh, yeah.
At what point did you think, oh, I can make a career out of this?
My mom and I drove all over the place in the States, going to different university camps, just trying to get notice and looks. Then the offers started to kind of roll in. Big guy that runs fast, got some people's attention. And I remember going to those things and kind of being a little unsure of myself and doing really, really well and excelling. And I think after that, I got a totally different level of confidence. I'm like, I can do this and I can do this at a high level.
Ahead of the draft, what is going through your mind?
I'm trying to let myself, feel it and celebrate it, because it is a really special moment, especially the draft being just a stone's throw away from where I'm living. I take a lot of pride from being where I am. I have tattooed on me, so I don't know if you could write it up any better for a kid like me. I think for me, what I'm looking for is, a team that, really loves me, really values me, and is going to utilize me the right way.
When you think about the people who got you here, who comes to your mind?
My mom, yeah. My mom, she's a special, special woman. She's done a lot for me and my brothers to get us here. She's been through a lot. She's fought, scratched, and clawed for the life that me and my brothers now have. Being a single mom with 6 kids is not easy. So I just hope to bring her some joy. That's like, the most fulfilling thing for me is like, walking into the stadium and see my mom and see a little tear in her eye and know that like I gave her a little bit of joy. When I think about why I'm here, I think about my mom.
Kingsville resident Rachel Bro took a chance on a hobby. Her business, called Pixie Dream Babe, is a culmination of her love for clothes, thrifting, and art, but it was born out of sheer survival after she began raising 5 kids alone. And as single mothers often do, she's made it work.
This bag of babies. I'd really like to use this bag of babies on something. I gave birth to my first daughter and I just didn't like any of the baby clothes for her. So at first I just started cutting up like all my old band shirts and t-shirts from high school and making her like cool dresses. And I just kept having babies. I kept making clothes. Well, I was left in a situation where I was raising my 5 children on my own, and I needed something that I could pay my bills with and stay home with my children. They weren't all in school yet, so and there was kids homesick and dentist appointments and everything else, so I had to have something I could do at home. It's got a pumpkin pie that you wear on your head. Unless somebody writes me with a specific custom order for like a themed birthday party or something like that, I usually just open my cupboards and something usually pops out at me and then I go from there. The most challenging part for me was the business side of it, because I'm such an artist and I wasn't super confident in putting my stuff out there. I remember the first time somebody ordered something from me, it was a little skirt that my daughter was wearing, and when she received it, she said, "I love it, but the stitching is all crooked on the inside." So I told her, "I'll give you your money back, but just so you know, like, I'm not Walmart, I'm an artist making you a piece." And in the end, she ended up loving it and keeping it. I love thrift shopping with my mom. And now I don't feel so bad shopping because I'm using it all. Sometimes I feel like it pulls on her heartstrings when I cut up like a vintage quilt or something, but then I remind her that it's getting turned into something else beautiful that's not going to sit in a basket in the side of a bedroom or something. I'm feeling very proud of myself that I can do what I love, take the time off I want. I have financial freedom and freedom to be with my kids. I'm my own boss, and I'm doing something good for the earth.
Colette, I thought you might find this interesting because we've been talking about things blooming early. This weekend, I ate asparagus out of my parents' garden.
Are you serious?
Yes, and it was lovely. It wasn't real like the thick stalks, but it was very delicious nonetheless.
I often find the thinner ones actually are nicer, like flavorful, but when it's fresh out of the garden, I'm sure it's delightful.
Anything is good fresh out of the garden.
Well, good for you. That's awesome. I like hearing about that. I'm not sure everyone's going to like hearing about what I have to say here in terms of what's coming next. There is some colder air to the north that's trying to filter a little further south towards our region, the lower Great Lakes. Such a contrast along that division where there's the milder air and this much colder Arctic air. And with that, you see not just that there's some active weather, but all the lightning strikes right there where we have that temperature gradient. It's also that contrast, that temperature gradient, that is driving the winds. So some really strong winds. To the north of us, though, it is a flash freeze warning. All the areas here in purple, and a special weather statement there too, with that advisory a little bit further back. So -8 in Moosonee. I'm not saying we're going there, but just letting you know, -2 in Pickle Lake, just how cold that air is. That is, it'll get modified a bit, but is moving in our direction. So current temperatures still double digits. all around, and it's not going to be that cold overnight tonight. It really kind of takes its time. So tonight it's cooler. Tomorrow night is when the temperatures will really drop off as it sort of settles in. So the winds, these are the sustained ones, and some of those sustained winds you can see still dangerously close to 40 kilometers an hour, and the gusts at times have been much closer to 70, and right now winds are still reporting over 60 kilometers an hour. Now some of the heavier rains are kind of pushing more towards the south, but tagging through Leamington and Point Pelee, and then there are pockets where there's that thunderstorm activity where locally there are some more significant downpours too, and winds are kind of stuck in between Sarnia as well. The remnants, they really fall apart, but the remnants will be coming through, so mostly some lighter showers is all we're talking about through the overnight, drying up by tomorrow. The clouds still there in the morning. Those clouds will be eroding as we go into the afternoon, and we'll get some sunshine coming, even though we'll have a northerly flow and that cooler air is going to be moving in, all right? But we get into the sunshine, and once we do, we get to hold on to it for Thursday as well. Other than locally where you might see just the remnants of one of those storms later, it's mostly just very, very light scattered showers. The winds are still going to be a little blustery through the evening, and then tomorrow it's still a moderate wind, a northerly flow, a cooler feel, just not quite as strong, all right? So our temperature story, we drop by tomorrow morning to 6, and our daytime high just 9 degrees, still breezy but clearing. We're going to rebound pretty nicely here, but just watch out. Thursday morning, Meg, -1. Hopefully the asparagus plants can handle that.
Thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
There's more debate over wearing a keffiyeh at the Ontario Legislature. We have those details coming up. An attempt to reverse the ban on wearing the keffiyeh inside the Ontario Legislature was voted down again today. The Speaker banned the checkered scarf that's commonly worn by Arabs and Palestinians last week, saying it's turned into a political article of clothing that should not be allowed at Queen's Park. The CBC's Lorenda Redekop has more.
This House acknowledged that the keffiyeh is a culturally significant clothing item to many in Ontario's Palestinian, Muslim and Arab communities.
A second attempt by the NDP to undo the ban on wearing keffiyehs inside the Legislature building.
Agreed? Heard some no's.
This time, there were more of those no's, all from the government side. Not just Eglinton Lawrence MPP Robin Martin this time, but also Lisa MacLeod, who represents Nepean. She called out that it's divisive, anti-Semitic, and insulting at Passover. And there were other voices. Then,
Free Palestine!
A few protesters in the visitors gallery chanted and pulled out their scarves.
This House stands in recess for 15 minutes.
The protesters were removed, and after question period resumed, the government House leader attacked the NDP leader for bringing forward the motion.
Because what she has chosen to do, Mr. Speaker, is to attempt to divide Ontarians, Mr. Speaker. I come from a caucus that is the most diverse caucus in the history of this province, Mr. Speaker.
By that time, independent MPP Sarah Jama had donned her keffiyeh. It was a complaint against her wearing one in the past that sparked all this. In the end, she didn't get kicked out, though she was expecting it.
This is in solidarity with all the Palestinians who've consistently been told or threatened to keep quiet about what's going on back home.
She says cultural clothing often has a political message.
It's completely ridiculous and theatrical that we're not allowed to wear this cultural cloth in this place.
The Speaker sits on the other end of the chamber from Jama. He says he couldn't tell for sure what she was wearing.
To start question period, I don't do a scan of what everyone's wearing as my first priority. But again, if it's drawn to my attention by way of a point of order, I'd obviously have to deal with it.
The Premier supports allowing the keffiyeh at Queen's Park, like all the party leaders, but today didn't whip the vote.
This is a very sensitive topic around the world and here, and I, you know, they're passionate. But no, not on that. Now, if someone had major policy issues and they kept doing that's a whole different ballgame.
So what happens now?
I don't think the keffiyeh should be banned at Queen's Park. So we will continue to look at other options.
So this issue will likely come back yet again. And Sarah Jama says she plans to keep wearing her keffiyeh here at the Legislature. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Thousands of delegates and observers from hundreds of countries are in Ottawa. They're working on a historic UN treaty to curb global plastic waste, but Canada's Environment Minister says the goal is not a total ban on plastics.
Those that we need for different applications, medical application, aeronautics, EV sectors, let's ensure that those plastics have a lot of value and that we keep them in the economy and out of the environment and our bodies.
The objective of this week's conference is to firm up the language of a legally binding international agreement. The goal is to eliminate plastic pollution by the year 2040. A dramatic vehicle rescue when Good Samaritans sprang into action. We show you that footage coming up. A former tabloid publisher says he helped Donald Trump kill stories that could have damaged his reputation. David Pecker testified for a second day at the former U.S. president's hush money trial in New York. Trump spoke outside the courtroom, insisting the charges are politically motivated.
We have the worst president in the history of our country, and he's the one that has us in all these different lawsuits.
Prosecutors argue Pecker participated in a catch-and-kill scheme with Trump to cover up sex scandals that could hurt his 2016 presidential campaign. The former National Enquirer publisher said he would alert Trump's team about damaging stories and suppress them. He said he also agreed to run damaging stories on Trump's rivals. Trump is accused of falsifying business records to conceal sex scandals. He has pleaded not guilty to 34 charges. The testimony comes after prosecutors accused the former U.S. president of violating a gag order several times. The judge has reversed his decision on that matter for now. The trial resumes Thursday. A dramatic rescue was caught on dash cam after a fiery car crash in Minnesota.
Get him out. It's the only thing going through my head. Everyone just stepped up and just did it. It wasn't training, it was just being in the right place at the right time.
It happened when an SUV left the highway, hit a lamppost, and burst into flames, trapping the driver inside. Now take a look at the frantic moments when a group of Good Samaritans stopped and sprang into action to help save his life. They struggled to pry open the doors with the vehicle pinned along a barrier, but a highway worker who jumped in to help had a special tool to shatter the window, and they were able to pull the driver to safety with just seconds to spare. The driver suffered only minor injuries. A special guest visited a U.S. Air Force base in Florida recently, but didn't receive a warm welcome. A 3-meter-long alligator walked onto the base and parked itself under the wheels of a plane. When the reptile overstayed its welcome, wildlife officials were called in to move it to a nearby river. The base sent out a note saying our newest toothy airman has been relocated to a more suitable environment off base. The alligator was forced out of its home by an even larger one named Elvis. The relocated gator is said to be a little shook up, but is feeling fine. The Toronto Zoo says its 2-year-old snow leopard is pregnant. Cheetah arrived at the zoo in January. Staff are conducting ultrasounds to monitor her progress. They say Cheetah's birthing window is likely between May 6th and May 27th. The size of her litter has not been confirmed, but I'm going to bet they can confirm the babies will be cute. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.